All right, so let's actually hear the proposals and see if there's public comment and see if the LAO has any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greg Edwards, Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Industrial Relations. What you have before you are 4 proposals to implement legislation that was passed in this last cycle. The first proposal speaks to the requirement to develop regulations and standards for requiring hospitals to adopt workplace violation prevention plans. The legislation, SB 1299, also requires the division to compile statistics and provide an annual report to the legislature. And so this proposal requests resources to just fulfill that responsibility. The second legislative proposal is to implement the requirements of SB 1300, which will enhance the Division of Occupational Safety and Health's access to information during refinery turnarounds so that we can more perfectly target and evaluate how best to engage in those inspections during those turnaround inspections. The third item is to implement AB 1522, which created a new mandate that provides for paid sick leave for employees in California. The law requires that a notice be posted in every workplace. It requires that employees, either via check stub or through some notification in their paycheck, be informed of the sick hours that are accruing. And so this will be, we expect that this will generate additional claims. And so this proposal requests resources to appropriately enforce this enhancement to labor law. The last legislative proposal is to implement AB 2272, which is really unique. The California Advanced Services Fund is a project that essentially will cover over 1,300 miles of installing fiber optic infrastructure that will cross 18 counties and provide service to over 4 million people. This law clarifies existing statute with respect to projects that are subject to prevailing wage. And then just using past history, we expect that this also will require some additional report enforcement. This proposal asks for resources to effectively monitor and enforce prevailing wage law on these specific projects. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I'd like to split the items and make a motion to pass SB 1300, that portion of this.
Senator Hancock? Senator Bell? Senator Anderson?
Aye.
Okay, so that item passes and we will hold the other 2 items open at this time. Moving along, we do have an informational report on the process safety management implementation, and members probably remember that we worked on this for a number of years to try to improve oil refinery safety and also dealing with the other facilities that we have in the state that are high hazard facilities. So, Department?
Thank you. I'm very proud of my team for working very long hours and very hard on changing the culture of the entire process safety management program. This program now, and we're working very closely with other agencies, so we have a very collaborative effort with the California Environmental Protection Agency, CalEPA, and a host of other agencies where we're working together to ensure that we have consistent messaging, consistent regulations, consistent, and that we fill in the gaps in terms of our enforcement. The teams are, we've had over 20 meetings with stakeholders, both community, labor, management, industry, in developing proposed regulations to improve the enforcement and consistency of our enforcement. We want regulations that are enforceable and that are clear, and we are working with all partners to develop those regulations. We've been also working to develop and implement SB 1300, and I would like Clyde to talk about that implementation because it is well on its way, and we've focused on that implementation. The teams have, and thank you to the legislature, to you, Chairwoman Hancock, we have increased our staffing. We've increased a facility, an industry fee to support that staffing. And we have staffed, trained, and deployed all but one person. We're still recruiting one down south because as people shift, change, retire, we're constantly plugging in those shifts, and we're recruiting the best of our teams into our PSM unit. Staffing and training and many hours of this effort have been dedicated to ensure implementation of our renewed, revised program. Would you speak to SB 1300 and your implementation, as well as probably the non-refinery areas of interest to you as well? And again, there we have used technology. We've had interagency agreements with the federal government on confidential information regarding the high hazard non-refinery units, and we have selected that. We have a methodology in place, and we'll speak to that as well, of picking the top 100 and how we do that, and how we also randomly select the non-high hazard, so that we do get a sampling of the non-high hazard as well. Clyde?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. Senate Bill 1300 is on its way. It was passed, and we're moving forward. All the 15 refineries in the state are required to provide us by September 15th all of their turnaround schedules for the year 2016. We'll be reviewing all of those turnaround schedules, mostly for what type of equipment and piping and systems that the refineries want to defer from their 2016 turnaround to their 2021 turnaround. And there's usually a pretty good laundry list of things they would like to defer out. Based on a review of those, and also in collaboration with our interagency working group, we'll pick 4 turnarounds, 2 up north and 2 down south. We'll notify the refineries 60 days before the turnaround starts. They'll be required to supply any changes that were made to the turnaround schedule that they originally supplied September 15th. Also, 30 days prior to the turnaround, any deferred maintenance that was, or any changes that was made from the 60-day. And there are a lot of changes that go through a refinery turnaround, which is why we asked a number of times. The day of the turnaround, they're to present us with with the justification for why they're deferring out the maintenance. If there's an issue with the deferment, then we're going to have a conversation about that. We're also going to be inspecting contractors through the turnaround. One of the issues is that there are a lot of out-of-state contractors that come in to work turnarounds, and sometimes they're unaware of the safety regulations that California has. So we'll be doing a lot of we'll be doing pretty much inspecting all the contractors in the turnaround, and then and looking for any type of violations.
Great. And And will you continue to report to the legislature? I have to say, I'm particularly interested in the unfulfilled work orders that came from, if you remember, with the Chevron refinery, they had been asked to upgrade the pipes a number of times, and they just never had.
Well-
And it's what we want to know, I think, you know, when these inspections occur, is, well, I would very much like to know, do we have a pattern of our findings in inspection times not being corrected?
You know, I'm hoping so. An
You're
example.
hoping so?
Well, no, I guess
No.
I say that because, you know, right now I see Senate Bill 1300 already working.
Yeah.
And I say that is because Chevron is under a terms of probation with the county and attorney general's office. My office enforces that probation terms. They had for the 2014 37 items that were to be deferred until the 2019 turnaround.
yeah.
They in turn decided to do all of those deferred maintenance at the 2014 turnaround. So there were no, so what was scheduled
That's good.
to be deferred is now not being scheduled.
Good.
And I see that pattern, you know, continuing in the future with all the refineries.
Right. If I could also ask you, reference in your letter and the report that you're working on regulations,
Yes.
and I wondered what the time frame was for that, and can you tell us more about it?
Okay, well, we're working with, you know, in conjunction with Cal EPA, with their CalARP regulation.
Yeah.
We're hoping, we're pretty much on schedule to get the, well, have the regulation package done by July. I believe we have to have the economic analysis done by August or September. Then that whole package goes to for us, for Cal OSHA, goes to the standards board, and then they start the rulemaking promulgation.
Great, so it will be ready to kick in 2016.
I'm hoping it will be. I'll be encouraging them to.
Okay. You know, that would be good. I was concerned, I have to say, when I read the report, that very little was said about the 1,500 other hazardous facilities that aren't oil refineries, but also pose a high risk. And I wonder what you can tell us about that. You know, I believe that well, we were figuring that you had managed to inspect only about 2.5% of those facilities with existing staff, and at that rate, it would take 38 years or something to actually inspect those facilities. So I'm wondering, have you considered a fee schedule that would allow more frequent inspections than every 32 years? Do you have a list of the highest hazard non-refinery facilities? I think you did indicate that you had that. And can you share that with the committee?
I can share the numbers and what we're doing.
Well, the numbers and what kinds of facilities they are.
Of course, of course.
So that we sort of get a sense of priority and a little bit of a sense of how hazardous those are. We know they're probably not as hazardous as oil refineries. On the other hand, there was that fertilizer factory in Texas that blew up, right?
Yes, there was.
So there are things that we need to look at. So I'd appreciate it if the committee could have your list of the highest risk facilities so that we can know a little bit about what the industries are, where they're located.
Sure.
That sort of thing. And then what kind of analysis have you done about the inspection levels and the staff levels needed to inspect that very large number of facilities, 1,500?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
Okay. It's so let's look a little bit before 2012. I had my minimum staff was 7 compliance officers that were doing refineries, complaints, accidents, and planned inspections. So they were doing all of it.
Yeah.
Now what's nice, it's the best part after 2012 is that I've got a dedicated team to refineries, and I have a dedicated team of 6 compliance officers to non-refinery facilities, inspection of non-refinery facilities, and they're dedicated to that. So they don't do any of the other work that compliance that comes to our office. I have other compliance officers dedicated to that. Also, prior to 2012, we only had to go by the public federal EPA risk RMP list to determine who we're going to inspect on the non-refinery side. And that didn't give us a lot of information, didn't give us any information on who the high-risk facilities were. So in 2012, we were able to work with federal EPA and get a more expanded list. And in reviewing that list that they had, there was 130 high-risk facilities in the state of California, non-refinery facilities. And within that 130, there are ammonia refrigeration facilities, there are chlorine facilities, chemical plants, like say Dow Chemical in Pittsburgh, General Chemical over in Pittsburgh. They're all part of that list, like Safeway's distribution center that has over 60,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia, chlorine facilities, water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants. That's the majority of that list of 130. Now, what we decided to look at wasn't necessarily how many workers were on site, which we do care about because that's our mission, but we also said, okay, well, what if there was a release, how many of, what was the public size that it would affect? And, so the highest was 4.9 million residents, or community people. So so what we decided to do this year, since we got that list this year, we took, we're going to do the top 40 of that 130 this year and conduct in-depth, planned inspections of those facilities. And again, remember, prior to 2012, we were doing about 60 hours. We're doing 100 to 300 hours now. So we're spending a lot more time in those high-risk facilities than we were, a number of years ago.
Okay, great, thank you. That's very helpful. We really are trying to get more of a handle on understanding what we need to do to look at those facilities as well. That's great. I think that's it, and thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Senator Anderson has no questions.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
that concludes this part of our budget. Department of Human Resources.